Today, we're going to explore a powerful idea that can change the way you attract women, especially as you get older. And you know what's most interesting? It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with looks. And it definitely has nothing to do with those cheesy pickup lines you find all over the internet. The truth is, these two words activate something much deeper in the female brain, something that triggers emotional connection points that most men don't even know exist. And look, I'm going to tell you exactly what these words are. I'll explain the science behind it, but there's a detail that almost no one notices. And it's exactly this detail that separates the men women forget from the men they can't stop thinking about. Stay with me until the end, because this information can completely change the way you communicate. Let me tell you something. For years, I've studied thousands of interactions between men and women. And you know what I realized? The men who attract the most aren't necessarily the best looking. They aren't the richest. They are the ones who master one very simple thing: direct emotional communication. While most men are spinning their wheels in empty conversations, trying to please, trying not to offend, constantly second-guessing every word they say. The men who truly stand out operate from a completely different place. They don't chase validation, they create emotional clarity. They don't hide behind humor or small talk, they express intention. And that difference is everything. Now, I want you to pause for a second and think about your own experiences. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you held back what you really wanted to say because you were afraid of how it might be received? How many times have you softened your words, diluted your intent, or played it safe only to end up being overlooked, forgotten, or placed in that frustrating nice guy category? If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but still not getting the response you want, I want you to comment, "I get it," below, because this is where everything starts to shift. When you realize that attraction isn't about doing more, it's about communicating differently. And this is exactly what I, Dr. Emily Carter, host of the Female Game YouTube channel, want to help you understand today. Not through manipulation, not through tricks, but through a deeper awareness of how emotional connection actually works inside a woman's mind. Because once you understand this, everything changes, the way you speak changes, the way you carry yourself changes, and most importantly, the way she feels around you changes. You see, the human brain is wired to respond to certainty. Not perfection, not performance, certainty. And when a man communicates with emotional certainty, it creates a sense of safety and intrigue at the same time. That combination is incredibly powerful. It's what makes a woman lean in, pay attention, and remember you long after the interaction is over. This is where most men get it wrong. They think attraction is about impressing, but real attraction is about impact. It's about how you make her feel in your presence, and even more importantly, how she feels when she's not around you anymore. So, let's break this down in a way that you can actually use in your real life. Because theory is useless if you don't know how to apply it. The first word is "I want." And I know what you're thinking. That sounds too simple, too obvious, almost insignificant. But this is where you need to look deeper, because it's not the word itself. It's what the word represents psychologically. When a man says, "I want," with clarity and grounded confidence, he is doing something most men avoid. He is taking ownership of his desire. He is not outsourcing decision making. He is not waiting for permission. He is not hiding behind ambiguity. He is stepping into direction. Let me give you a real-life scenario. Imagine you're texting a woman you're interested in. Most men say something like, "Hey, maybe we could hang out sometime if you're free." It sounds polite. It sounds safe, but emotionally it creates zero impact. Why? Because it places the responsibility on her, it communicates uncertainty, it signals that you're not fully invested in your own desire. Now compare that with this. "I want to take you out this Saturday. There's a place I think you'll love." Feel the difference, not just intellectually. Feel it emotionally. One creates hesitation, the other creates momentum. One asks, the other leads. And here's something very important to understand. Leadership and attraction is not about control. It's about clarity. It's about creating direction so she doesn't have to carry that burden. Because when a man lacks direction, a woman subconsciously feels like she has to step into that role. And when that happens, attraction begins to fade. Let me tell you about a man I once worked with. He was intelligent, kind, successful in his career, but completely invisible in his dating life. Women liked him, but they didn't feel drawn to him. When we analyzed his conversations, one pattern kept showing up. He never expressed what he wanted directly. Everything was optional. Everything was vague. So I gave him a simple exercise. For 1 week, I told him to replace every passive suggestion with a clear "I want" statement. Not aggressively, not forcefully, just clearly. Instead of, "We could grab coffee sometime," he said, "I want to grab coffee with you this week." Instead of, "Maybe we should talk again," he said, "I want to continue this conversation." Within days, the responses he received completely changed. Women started engaging more. They responded faster. They showed more curiosity. And do you know why? Because clarity is attractive. Certainty is attractive. A man who knows what he wants stands out in a world full of hesitation. But this is where most men make a critical mistake. They think saying "I want" is enough. It's not, because if you only operate from desire without emotional awareness, you can come across as self-centered. And that's where the second word becomes essential. I appreciate. Now this is where depth enters the equation. Because while I want communicates direction, I appreciate communicates perception. It tells her that you don't just desire her, you see her. And being seen, truly seen, is one of the most powerful emotional experiences. Imagine you've just had a meaningful conversation with a woman. Instead of ending it with something generic like, "That was fun," you say, "I really appreciate how you think." There's a depth to your perspective that's rare. Do you understand what just happened there? You didn't compliment her looks. You didn't rely on surface-level praise. You acknowledged something deeper, something personal, something that makes her feel understood. And when a woman feels understood, she opens emotionally, not because she has to, but because she wants to. This is backed by psychological research on emotional validation. When someone feels recognized for who they are internally, it activates reward centers in the brain. It creates a sense of connection that goes far beyond physical attraction. And this is why combining "I want" and "I appreciate" is so powerful. I want to see you again because I appreciate the way you challenge my thinking. I want to spend more time with you. I appreciate your energy. It's different now. You're not just expressing desire, you're attaching meaning to that desire. You're giving her a reason to feel special without sounding needy. And here's the subtle but critical distinction. You are not needing her. You are choosing her. And that difference is everything. If this is resonating with you right now, take a moment and like the video, not for me, but for yourself. Because that small action reinforces a decision, the decision to communicate at a higher level. Now, let's talk about the mistake that quietly destroys all of this. And that mistake is lack of congruence. Congruence is when your words, your tone, your body language, and your emotional state are all aligned. When there's no contradiction between what you say and how you say it, because here's the truth. A woman doesn't just listen to your words, she reads your energy. If you say, "I want to take you out," but your voice is shaky, your posture is closed, and your eye contact is weak, the message doesn't land. In fact, it creates confusion. And the brain interprets that confusion as lack of confidence. It's like saying one thing verbally while communicating the opposite emotionally. And the female brain is incredibly sensitive to these inconsistencies. It picks up on microsignals, tone shifts, hesitation, subtle tension. It acts like an emotional filter that's constantly scanning for authenticity. So, how do you fix this? You slow down, you become aware of your body, you ground yourself before you speak. When you say "I want," feel it in your chest. Let it come from a place of certainty, not performance. Stand upright, relax your shoulders, maintain eye contact without forcing it. And when you say "I appreciate," Pause for a moment, let the words carry weight, speak slightly slower, allow sincerity to come through your tone. Here's a simple exercise you can practice starting today. Stand in front of a mirror and say, "I want to see you again." Notice your posture, notice your breathing, notice if there's tension. Now adjust, open your chest, breathe deeper, say it again, but this time feel it. Then say, "I appreciate the way you express yourself," and this time slow down. Let there be a slight pause before and after the word appreciate. What you're doing here is training alignment. You're teaching your body and your voice to support your words because words alone are not enough. Delivery is everything, and there's one more layer that takes this to an entirely different level: timing. You don't use these words randomly. You don't repeat them mechanically. That kills authenticity. You use them in moments that matter at the end of a meaningful interaction after a shared experience, during a pause in conversation where emotion is present. For example, imagine you've just finished. Instead of filling it with nervous chatter, you look at her and say, "I want to do this again. I really appreciate the energy you bring." That moment becomes a memory. And memory is what drives attraction over time, because long after the words are spoken, the feeling remains. And next, I'm going to show you something even deeper: how to use emotional contrast, tension, and silence to amplify the power of these words, and why most men unintentionally talk themselves out of attraction without even realizing it. What most men don't realize is that attraction is not built in the obvious moments. It's not built when you're trying your hardest to impress. It's built in the subtle shifts, the pauses, the tone changes, the emotional contrasts that happen between the words. And this is where we go deeper, because if you truly understand this layer, you don't just communicate better, you become unforgettable. Let's go back to something I said earlier. A woman doesn't just listen to what you say. She experiences how you say it, and that experience is shaped by emotional contrast. Without contrast, there is no tension. Without contrast, there is no tension. There is no curiosity, and without curiosity, attraction fades. Think about a conversation where everything feels flat. Same tone, same energy, no variation. It becomes predictable, safe but forgettable. Now think about a conversation where there are moments of lightness followed by moments of depth, where there's playfulness and then suddenly sincerity. That shift creates emotional spikes. And those spikes are what the brain remembers. So when you use "I want" and "I appreciate," it's not just about the words themselves, it's about when you place them in the emotional rhythm of the interaction. Let me show you what I mean with a real-life example. Imagine you're on a date, you're both laughing, joking, keeping things light. The energy is playful. This is good. But if you stay there the entire time, you remain in the fun but not meaningful category. Now, at a certain moment, you slow things down, your tone softens slightly. You hold eye contact just a little longer and you say, "I want to ask you something real." Notice what just happened. You created contrast. You shifted the emotional frame. Now she's curious. Now she's engaged on a deeper level. She might even lean in without realizing it. Then, after she shares something meaningful, instead of jumping back into jokes immediately, you stay in that moment just a little longer and say, "I appreciate that you shared that. Most people don't open up like that." Now you've done something very few men do. You've created a safe emotional space and then validated it. This is how emotional bonding actually forms. And here's the part that's even more powerful. When you create these emotional contrasts consistently, she starts associating you with depth, with presence, with a feeling that she doesn't get in most interactions, and that's when attraction moves beyond surface level. But let's talk about something that quietly destroys this dynamic: over-talking. Most men talk too much when they feel nervous. They feel silence because silence feels uncomfortable. But silence, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful tools you have. Silence creates anticipation. Silence creates space for emotion to sink in. Silence allows your words to carry weight. Let me give you a simple scenario. You say, "I want to see you again." And then you immediately keep talking, explaining, justifying, adding more words. You dilute the impact. Now imagine this instead. I want to see you again. And then you stop, you hold eye contact. You let the moment breathe. That silence amplifies everything you just said. It gives her space to feel it, not just hear it. And this is something you can start practicing immediately. The next time you express something meaningful, resist the urge to fill the gap. Let there be a pause. Let there be a moment of stillness. Because confidence is not just in what you say, it's in what you allow. Now let's go even deeper into the psychology behind this. There's a concept called emotional imprinting. This is when a specific moment creates a lasting emotional memory in someone's mind. And these imprints are not created through logic. They're created through emotional intensity and uniqueness. So, when you combine clear intention, genuine appreciation, emotional contrast, and well-placed silence, you create moments that stand out, moments that replay in her mind later, moments where she thinks there's something different about him. And difference is what creates attraction. Let me share a story with you. There was a woman who once described to me why she couldn't stop thinking about a man she had only met twice. She said, it wasn't what he said, it was how he made me feel. In those small moments, he would look at me like he actually saw me, and when he spoke, it felt intentional, not rushed, not forced. That's what we're talking about here. Intentional presence. Now, here's where we turn this into something practical for you. I want you to start observing your own communication patterns. Notice when you rush your words. Notice when you avoid saying what you really want. Notice when you give generic compliments instead of meaningful appreciation. And then start making small adjustments. Instead of saying you're fun, say, I appreciate how easy it is to talk to you. That's rare. Instead of saying we should hang out again, say, I want to see you again. I enjoyed this. Instead of filling every silence, allow 1 or 2 seconds of pause. These are small shifts, but they create massive changes in how you're perceived. And here's something very important to understand. This is not about memorizing lines. This is about embodying a mindset, because if you try to use these words without actually feeling them, it won't work. It will come across as scripted. And authenticity is something that cannot be faked for long. So how do you build authenticity? You start by becoming honest with yourself. What do you actually want? What do you genuinely appreciate in others? If you don't know the answer to those questions, take some time to reflect, because clarity within yourself translates directly into clarity in your communication, and women respond to that clarity more than anything else. Now, let's talk about another layer that most men completely overlook: emotional specificity. Generic statements create generic reactions. Specific statements create emotional impact. For example, if you say, I appreciate you, it's nice, but it's vague. Now, compare that with, I appreciate how you stay calm even when things get stressful. That says a lot about you. Now, it's specific. Now, it feels real because you're pointing to something unique about her. And when you do that, you separate yourself from every other man who's giving surface-level compliments. This is how you stand out without trying to impress. Now, let me challenge you with something. The next time you're in a conversation with a woman, I want you to do 3 things. First, express 1 clear I want statement. Second, give 1 specific I appreciate statement. And third, allow at least 1 moment of silence after something meaningful. That's it. You don't need to overcomplicate this. Just those 3 actions can completely change the dynamic of the interaction. And here's what's going to happen. If you do this correctly, she will feel more engaged. She will open up more. She will remember you more clearly, and most importantly, she will start associating you with a feeling of emotional depth. Now, before we move into the final part, there's 1 more subtle detail I want you to understand. And this might be the most important one of all. It's the difference between outcome focus and presence. Most men are focused on the result. They're thinking, do I get her number? Does she like me? Is this going somewhere? And that mindset creates pressure. Pressure in your tone, pressure. But when you shift your focus to presence, everything changes. You're no longer trying to get something. You're experiencing something. You're not chasing a reaction. You're creating a connection. And ironically, when you stop chasing the outcome starts moving toward you because your energy becomes more grounded, more relaxed, more attractive. So as you move forward with this, remember the simple principle. Clarity creates attraction. Appreciation creates connection. Presence creates impact. And next, I'm going to bring all of this together and show you how to use these principles in different stages of interaction, from the first conversation to deeper emotional bonding, and the one hidden mistake that can undo everything if you're not aware of it. Now, let's bring everything together in a way that actually transforms how you show up in real life. Because understanding these ideas is powerful, but embodying them is what creates results. And this final layer is where most men either elevate completely or fall back into old patterns without even realizing it. I want you to imagine the entire interaction with the woman as a journey, not a moment. From the first conversation to the first meeting to the deeper emotional connection that forms over time, at every stage, the way you use intention and appreciation evolves. And when you understand how to calibrate that evolution, you stop guessing and you start leading the emotional direction of the interaction naturally. Let's start with the very first interaction. This is where curiosity is everything. You're not trying to impress her. You're not trying to prove your worth. You're simply establishing presence and clarity. Most men either come in too strong or too passive. At the beginning, your I want doesn't need to be heavy. It just needs to be clear and grounded. Instead of overthinking your approach, you say something simple like, I saw you and I wanted to come say hi. That's it. No performance, no over-explanation. And already you've separated yourself from the majority of men who hide behind indirect communication. Then as the conversation unfolds, you observe, you listen, you stay present. And when something genuinely stands out to you, that's where I appreciate comes in. Not forced, not rehearsed, earned. Maybe she expresses a strong opinion. Maybe she shares something unique about her life. That's your moment. I appreciate how direct you are. That's refreshing. Do you see the pattern? Clarity first, appreciation second. Now, let's move to the next stage, the early connection phase where most men lose momentum. This is where consistency matters because one good moment is not enough. Attraction grows through repeated emotional experiences, but at this stage, your communication becomes slightly more intentional. You're not just expressing interest, you're building anticipation. Instead of random texting, you create direction. I want to see you this week. Let's do something different. Notice there's still clarity, but now there's also intrigue. And when you meet again, this is where emotional contrast becomes even more important. You don't stay in one emotional lane. You allow moments of playfulness and moments of depth. You tease lightly and then you ground the interaction with sincerity. For example, in the middle of a light conversation, you pause and say, I want to ask you something real. That shift alone changes the entire dynamic because now she's not just interacting with you, she's experiencing. And when she shares something meaningful, you anchor that moment. I appreciate that you told me that. It shows a different side of you. This is how trust begins to form, not through time alone, but through emotional depth within that time. Now, let's go even further, the deeper bonding stage. This is where emotional safety and emotional excitement must coexist. If it's only safe, it becomes boring. If it's only exciting, it becomes unstable. But when you balance both, you create something incredibly powerful. At this stage, your I want becomes more personal. I want to spend more time with you. Simple but direct. And your I appreciate becomes more intimate. I appreciate how you make things feel easy. I don't feel that with many people. Now you're no longer just creating attraction. You're creating attachment. And here's something very few men understand. Attachment is built through emotional consistency, not intensity alone. So it's not about saying these things once and expecting magic. It's about embodying this way of communicating over time. Now let's address the hidden mistake that can undo everything: over-validation. At some point, many men start overusing appreciation. They begin complimenting too often, too quickly, without depth. And when appreciation loses its specificity, it loses its value. Predictability reduces attraction. So stay selective. Appreciate when it's real, earned, specific. Express genuine recognition. Emotional self-control is key. Build internal stability. Express I want without fear of rejection. Express I appreciate without expectation. Confidence is born from self-trust. Instead of asking, does she like me? Ask, do I genuinely enjoy this interaction? Be clear, be present, be real. Say what you want, acknowledge what you value, and then allow the moment to exist without forcing it. If you start applying even a small part of this, you will notice a shift inside and out. If this gave you a new perspective, like the video and share it. Subscribe for more, because this is just the